Gylfaginning. Here begins the beguiling of Gylfi. Stanza 1. King Gylfi ruled in the land that men now call Sweden. It is told of him that he gave to a wandering woman, in return for her merrymaking, a ploughland in his realm, as much as 4 oxen might turn up in a day and a night. But this woman was of the kin of the Aesir. She was named Gefjon. She took from the north, out of Jotunheim, 4 oxen, which were the soils of a certain giant, and herself, and set them before the plough. And the plough cut so wide and so deep that it loosened up the land, and the oxen drew the land out into the sea and to the westward, and stopped in a certain sound. There Gefjon set the land, and gave it a name, calling it Selland, and from that time on, the spot whence the land had been torn up is water. It is now called the Logor in Sweden, and bays lie in that lake, even as the headlands in Selland. Thus says Bragi, the ancient skald. Gefjon drew from Gylfi, gladly, the wave troves free hold, till from the running beasts sweat reeked to Denmark's increase. The oxen bore, moreover, 8 eyes, gleaming brow lights, o'er the fields wide, booty, and 4 heads in their ploughing. Stanza 2. King Gylfi was a wise man, and skilled in magic. He was much troubled that the Aesir people were so cunning that all things went according to their will. He pondered whether this might proceed from their own nature, or whether the divine powers which they worshipped might ordain such things. He set out on his way to Asgard, going secretly, and clad himself in the likeness of an old man, with which he dissembled. But the Aesir were wiser in this matter, having second sight, and they saw his journeying before ever he came, and prepared against him deceptions of the eye. When he came into town, he saw there a hall so high that he could not easily make out the top of it. Its thatching was laid with golden shields, after the fashion of a shingled roof. So also says Thjordolfr of Finn, that Valhall was thatched with shields. On their backs let them beam, sore battered with stones. Odin's hall shingles the shrewd seafarers. In the hall doorway, Gylfi saw a man juggling with anlaces, having 7 in the air at one time. This man asked of him his name. He called himself Gangleri, and said he had come by the paths of the serpent, and prayed for lodging for the night, asking, "Who owns this hall?" The other replied that it was their king, "And I will attend thee to see him. Then shalt thou thyself ask him concerning his name." And the man wheeled about before him into the hall, and he went after, and straightway the door closed itself on his heels. There he saw a great room, and much people, some with games, some drinking, and some had weapons, and were fighting. Then he looked about him, and thought unbelievable many things which he saw. And he said, "All the gateways, ere one goes out, should one scan, for it is uncertain where sit the unfriendly on the bench before thee." He saw 3 high seats, each above the other, and 3 men sat thereon, one on each. And he asked what might be the name of those lords. He who had conducted him in answered that the one who sat on the nethermost high seat was a king, and his name is Har, but the next is named Jonhar, and he who is uppermost is called 3D. Then Har asked the newcomer whether his errand were more than for the meat and drink which were always at his command, as for everyone there in the hall of the High One. He answered that he first desired to learn whether there were any wise man there within. Har said that he should not escape whole from thence unless he were wiser. And stand thou forth, who speirest, who answers, he shall sit. Stanza 3. Gangleri began his questioning thus: "Who is foremost, or oldest, of all the gods?" Har answered, "He is called in our speech Allfather, but in the Elder Asgard he had 12 names. One is Allfather, the second is Lord, or Lord of Hosts, the third is Nikar, or Spear Lord, the fourth is Nakudur, or Striker, the fifth is Knower of many things, the sixth Fulfiller of wishes, the seventh Far-speaking one, the eighth the Shaker, or he that putteth the armies to flight, the ninth the Burner, the 10th the Destroyer, the 11th the Protector, the 12th Gelding." Then asked Gangleri, "Where is this god? Or what power hath he, or what hath he wrought that is a glorious deed?" Har made answer, "He lives throughout all ages, and governs all his realm, and directs all things, great and small." Then said Jafnar, "He fashioned heaven and earth and air, and all things which are in them." Then spake Thridi, "The greatest of all is this, that he made man, and gave him the spirit, which shall live and never perish, though the flesh frame rot to mold, or burn to ashes, and all men shall live, such as are just in action, and be with himself in the place called Gimli. But evil men go to hell, and thence down to the misty hell, and that is down in the 9th world." Then said Gangleri, "What did he before heaven and earth were made?" And Har answered, "He was then with the rime giants." Stanza 4. Gangleri said, "What was the beginning, or how began it, or what was before it?" Har answered, "As is told in Voluspa. Erst was the age when nothing was, nor sand nor sea, nor chilling stream waves. Earth was not found, nor ether, heaven, a yawning gap, but grass was none." Then said Jafnar, "It was many ages before the earth was shaped that the mist world was made, and midmost within it lies the well that is called Vergelmir, from which spring the rivers called Svol, Guntra, Fjorm, Fimbothel, Slither, and Hrid, Silger, and Ilger, Vid, Lector. Jol is hard by hell gates." And Thridi said, "Yet first was the world in the southern region, which was named Muspel. It is light and hot, that region is glowing and burning and impassable to such as are outlanders, and have not their holdings there. He who sits there at the land's end to defend the land is called Sutur. He brandishes a flaming sword, and at the end of the world he shall go forth and harry and overcome all the gods, and burn all the world with fire." Thus is said in Voluspa. "On his sword shimmers the son of the war gods. The rock crags crash, the fiends are reeling. Heroes tread hell way. Heaven is cloven." Stanza 5. Gangleri asked, "How were these things wrought, ere the races were and the tribes of men increased?" Then said Har, "The streams called ice waves, those which were so long come from the fountainheads that the yeasty venom upon them had hardened, like the slag that runs out of the fire. These then became ice, and when the ice halted and ceased to run, then it froze over above. But the drizzling rain that rose from the venom congealed to rime, and the rime increased, frost over frost, each over the other, even into Gununga Gap, the yawning void. Then spake Jafnar, Gununga Gap, which faced toward the northern quarter, became filled with heaviness, and masses of ice and rime, and from within drizzling rain and gusts. But the southern part of the yawning void was lighted by those sparks and glowing masses which flew out of Muspelheim. And Thridi said, Just as cold arose out of Niflheim and all terrible things, so also all that looked toward Muspelheim became hot and glowing. But Gununga Gap was as mild as windless air, and when the breath of heat met the rime, so that it melted and dripped, life was quickened from the yeast drops by the power of that which sent the heat, and became a man's form. And that man is named Emer, but the rhyme giants call him Argelimer, and thence are come the races of the rhyme giants, as it says in Voluspa the Less. All the witches spring from Witholf, all the warlocks are from Wilharm, and the spell singers spring from Swarthead. All the ogres of Emer come. But concerning this, says Vafthrudnir the giant, out of the ice waves issued venom drops, waxing until a giant was. Thence are our kindred come all together. So it is, they are savage forever. Then said Gangleri, how did the races grow thence? Or after what fashion was it brought to pass that more men came into being? Or do ye hold him God, of whom ye but now spake? And Jafnar answered, by no means do we acknowledge him God. He was evil, and all his kindred. We call them rhyme giants. Now it is said that when he slept, a sweat came upon him, and there grew under his left hand a man and a woman, and one of his feet begat a son with the other. And thus the races are come. These are the rhyme giants, the old rhyme giant. Him we call Emer. Stanza 6. Then said Gangleri, where dwelt Emer, or wherein did he find sustenance? Har answered, straightway after the rime dripped, there sprang from it the cow called Athumbla. 4 streams of milk ran from her udders, and she nourished Emer. Then asked Gangleri, wherewithal was the cow nourished? And Har made answer, she licked the ice blocks, which were salty, and the first day that she licked the blocks, there came forth from the blocks in the evening a man's hair, the second day a man's head, the third day the whole man was there. He is named Buri. He was fair of feature, great and mighty. He begat a son called Bor, who wedded the woman called Bestla, daughter of Bolthorn the giant. And they had 3 sons. One was Odin, the second Vili, the third Ve. And this is my belief, that he, Odin, with his brothers, must be ruler of heaven and earth. We hold that he must be so called. So is that man whom we know to be mightiest and most worthy of honor, and ye do well to let him be so called. Stanza 7. Then said Gangleri, what covenant was between them, or which was stronger? And Har answered, the sons of Bor slew Emer the giant. Lo, where he fell, there gushed forth so much blood out of his wounds that with it they drowned all the race of the rhyme giants, save that one, whom giants call Bergelmer, escaped with his household. He went upon his ship, and his wife with him, and they were safe there. And from them are come all the races of the rhyme giants, as is said here. Untold ages, ere earth was shapen, then was Bergelmer born. That first I recall, how the famous wise giant on the deck of the ship was laid down. Stanza 8. Then said Gangleri, what was done then by Bor's sons, if thou believe that they be gods? Har replied, in this matter there is no little to be said. They took Emer and bore him into the middle of the yawning void, and made of him the earth. Of his blood the sea and the waters. The land was made of his flesh, and the crags of his bones. Gravel and stones they fashioned from his teeth and his grinders, and from those bones that were broken. And Jafnar said, of the blood which ran and welled freely out of his wounds, they made the sea, when they had formed and made firm the earth together, and laid the sea in a ring round about her. Then said Thridi, they took also his skull, and made of it the heaven, and set it up over the earth with 4 corners, and under each corner they set a dwarf. The names of these are East, West, north, and south. Then they took the glowing embers and sparks that burst forth and had been cast out of Muspelheim, and set them in the midst of the yawning void, in the heaven, both above and below, to illume heaven and earth. They assigned places to all fires. To some in heaven, some wandered free under the heavens. Nevertheless, to these also they gave a place, and shaped them courses. It is said in old songs that from these the days are reckoned, and a tale of years told, as is said in Voluspa. The sun knew not where she had housing. The moon knew not what might he had. The stars knew not where stood their places. Thus was it ere the earth was fashioned. Then said Gangleri, "These are great tidings of which I now hear. That is a wondrous great piece of craftsmanship, and cunningly made. How was the earth contrived?" And Har answered, "She is ring-shaped without, and round about her without leath the deep sea. And along the strand of that sea they gave lands to the races of giants for habitation. But on the inner earth they made a citadel round about the world against the hostility of the giants. And for their citadel they raised up the brows of Ymir the giant, and called that place Midgard. They took also his brain, and cast it in the air, and made from it the clouds, as is here said. Of Ymir's flesh the earth was fashioned, and of his sweat the sea, crags of his bones, trees of his hair, and of his skull the sky. Then of his brows the blithe gods made Midgard for sons of men, and of his brain the bitter-mooted clouds were all created." Stanza 9. Then said Gangleri, "Much indeed they had accomplished then, methinks, when heaven and earth were made, and the sun and the constellations of heaven were fixed, and division was made of the days. Now whence come the men that people the world?" And Har answered, "When the sons of Bor were walking along the sea strand, they found 2 trees, and took up the trees, and shaped men of them. The first gave them spirit and life, the second wit and feeling, the third form, speech, hearing, and sight. They gave them clothing and names. The male was named Asker, and the female Embla, and of them was mankind begotten, which received a dwelling place under Midgard. Next they made for themselves in the middle of the world a city which is called Asgard. Men call it Troy. There dwelt the gods and their kindred, and many tidings and tales of it have come to pass, both on earth and aloft. There is one abode called Hlidskjalf, and when Allfather sat in the high seat there, he looked out over the whole world, and saw every man's acts, and knew all things which he saw. His wife was called Frigg, daughter of Fjorgvin, and of their blood is come that kindred, which we call the races of the Aesir, that have peopled the elder Asgard, and those kingdoms which pertain to it, and that is a divine race. For this reason must he be called Allfather, because he is father of all the gods, and of men, and of all that was fulfilled, of him and of his might. The earth was his daughter and his wife. On her he begot the first son, which is Asa Thor. Strength and prowess attend him, wherewith he overcometh all living things. Stanza 10. Norfi, or Narfi, is the name of a giant that dwelt in Jotunheim. He had a daughter called Night. She was swarthy and dark as befitted her race. She was given to the man named Naglfari. Their son was Aldur. Afterward she was wedded to him that was called Anar. Jord was their daughter. Last of all, Dayspring had her, and he was of the race of the Aesir. Their son was Day. He was radiant and fair after his father. Then Allfather took Night and Day her son, and gave to them 2 horses and 2 chariots, and set them up into the heavens to ride round about the earth every 2 half days. Night rides before with the horse named Frostymane, and on each morning he bedews the earth with the foam from his bit. The horse that Day has is called Sheenmane, and he illumines all the air and the earth from his mane. Stanza 11. Then said Gangleri, how does he govern the course of the sun or of the moon? Har answered, a certain man was named Mundulfari, who had 2 children. They were so fair and comely that he called his son Moon and his daughter Sun, and wedded her to the man called Glenir. But the gods were incensed at that insolence, and took the brother and sister and set them up in the heavens. They caused Sun to drive those horses that drew the chariot of the sun, which the gods had fashioned for the world's illumination, from that glowing stuff which flew out of Muspelheim. Those horses are called thus, Early Wake and All Strong, and under the shoulders of the horses the gods set 2 windbags to cool them, but in some records that is called Iron Coolness. Moon steers the course of the moon, and determines its waxing and waning. He took from the earth 2 children, called Bil and Yuki, they that went from the well called Björgr, bearing on their shoulders the cask called Sager, and the pole Simul. Their father is named Vidfinir. These children follow Moon, as may be seen from the earth. Stanza 12. Then said Gangleri, the sun fares swiftly, and almost as if she were afraid. She could not hasten her course any the more if she feared her destruction. Then Har made answer, it is no marvel that she hastens furiously. Close cometh he that seeks her, and she has no escape save to run away. Then said Gangleri, who is he that causes her this disquiet? Har replied, it is 2 wolves, and he that runs after her is called Skoll. She fears him, and he shall take her. But he that leaps before her is called Hati Hrodvitnsson. He is eager to seize the moon, and so it must be. Then said Gangleri, what is the race of the wolves? Har answered, a witch dwells to the east of Midgard, in the forest called Ironwood. In that wood dwell the troll woman, who are known as Ironwood woman. The old witch bears many giants for sons, and all in the shape of wolves, and from this source are these wolves sprung. The saying runs thus, from this race shall come one that shall be mightiest of all, he that is named Moonhound. He shall be filled with the flesh of all those men that die, and he shall swallow the moon, and sprinkle with blood the heavens and all the lair. Thereof shall the sun lose her shining, and the winds in that day shall be unquiet, and roar on every side. So it says in Voluspa. Eastward dwells the Old One, in Ironwood, and there gives birth to Fenrir's brethren. There shall spring of them all a certain one, the moon's taker, in Troll's likeness. He is filled with flesh of fey men, reddens the god's seats with ruddy blood gouts. Swart becomes sunshine in summers after, the weather all shifty. Wit ye yet, or what? Stanza 13. Then said Gangleri, what is the way to heaven from earth? Then Har answered and laughed aloud. Now that is not wisely asked. Has it not been told thee that the gods made a bridge from earth to heaven called Bifrost? Thou must have seen it. It may be that ye call it rainbow. It is of 3 colors, and very strong, and made with cunning and with more magic art than other works of craftsmanship. But strong as it is, yet must it be broken, when the sons of Muspel shall go forth harrying, and ride it, and swim their horses over great rivers. Thus they shall proceed. Then said Gangleri, to my thinking the gods did not build the bridge honestly, seeing that it could be broken, and they able to make it as they would. Then Har replied, the gods are not deserving of reproof because of this work of skill. A good bridge is Bifrost, but nothing in this world is of such nature that it may be relied on when the sons of Muspel go a-harrying. Stanza 14. Then said Gangleri, What did Allfather then do when Asgard was made? Har answered, In the beginning he established rulers, and bade them ordain fates with him, and give counsel concerning the planning of the town. That was in the place which is called Ida Field, in the midst of the town. It was their first work to make that court in which their 12 seats stand, and another, the high seat which Allfather himself has. That house is the best made of any on earth, and the greatest. Without and within, it is all like one piece of gold. Men call it Gladsheim. They made also a second hall. That was a shrine which the goddesses had, and it was a very fair house. Men call it Vingolf. Next, they fashioned a house wherein they placed a forge, and made besides a hammer, tongs, and anvil, and by means of these all other tools. After this, they smithied metal, and stone, and wood, and wrought so abundantly that metal which is called gold, that they had all their household ware, and all dishes of gold. And that time is called the Age of Gold, before it was spoiled by the coming of the woman, even those who came out of Jotunheim. Next, after this, the gods enthroned themselves in their seats, and held judgment, and called to mind whence the dwarves had quickened in the mold, and underneath in the earth, even as do maggots in flesh. The dwarves had first received shape and life in the flesh of Ymir, but by decree of the gods had become conscious with the intelligence of men, and had human shape, and nevertheless they dwell in the earth and in the stones. Modsogner was the first, and Durin the second. So it says in Voluspa. Then strode all the mighty to the seats of judgment, the gods most holy, and together held counsel. Who should of dwarves shape the peoples from the bloody surge and the blue one's bones? They made many in man's likeness, dwarves in the earth, as Durin said. And these, says the Sibyl, are their names: Nui and Nidi, Nordri and Sudri, Austri, Vestri, Althjolfr the Valen, Nar, Noin, Nippinger, Dain, Bifur, Baufur, Bumber, Nori, Ori, Onar, Oin, Mjodvitner, Vigr, and Gandalfr, Vindofr, Thorin, Fili, Kili, Funden, Vali, Thror, Throing, Thekr, Litra, and Vitra, Nir, Nirader, Rekr, Radsvider. And these also are dwarves, and dwell in stones, but the first in mold. Drapnir, Dogfari, Hor, Hugstari, Ledofr, Gloin, Dori, Ori, Dufur, Andvari, Heptaphili, Har, Zviar. And these proceed from Svarinshagar to Arvanger on Europlain, and thence is Lovar come. These are their names: Skirfr, Virfr, Skafjidr, Ai, Alfr, Ingvi, Eikenskjaldi, Faller, Frosty, Feeder, Ginar. Stanza 15. Then said Gangleri, Where is the chief abode or holy place of the gods? Har answered, That is at the ash of Yggdrasil. There the gods must give judgment every day. Then Gangleri asked, What is to be said concerning that place? Then said Jafnar, The ash is greatest of all trees, and best. Its limbs spread out over all the world, and stand above heaven. 3 roots of the tree uphold it, and stand exceedingly broad. One is among the Aesir, another among the Rime giants, in that place where aforetime was the yawning void. The third stands over Niflheim, and under that root is Vergelmer, and Nithauger gnaws the root from below. But under that root which turns towards the Rime giants is Mimir's well, wherein wisdom and understanding are stored, and he is called Mimir who keeps the well. He is full of ancient lore, since he drinks of the well from the Gjallar horn. Thither came Allfather, and craved one drink of that well, but he got it not, until he had laid his eye in pledge. So says Voluspa. All know I, Odin, where the eye thou hiddest. in the wide-renowned well of Mimir. Mimir drinks mead every morning from Valfather's wage. Wit ye yet, or what? The third root of the ash stands in heaven, and under that root is the well which is very holy. That is called the well of Urdur. There the gods hold their tribunal. Each day the Aesir ride thither up over Bifrost, which is also called the Aesir's Bridge. These are the names of the Aesir's steeds. Sleipnir is best, which Odin has. He has 8 feet. The second is Gladr, the third Gylr, the fourth Glenir, the fifth Skidbremer, the sixth Silfentropper, the seventh Sinner, the eighth Gisel, the ninth Falhofner, the 10th Gulltropper, the 11th Letfeti. Baldur's horse was burnt with him, and Thor walks to the judgment, and wades those rivers which are called thus: Kormt and Ormt, and the Karlogs twain. Them shall Thor wade every day when he goes to doom at the ash Yggdrasil, where the Aesir's bridge burns all with flame, and the holy waters howl. Then said Gangleri, Does fire burn over Bifrost? Har replied, That which thou seest to be red in the bow is burning fire. The hill giants might go up to heaven, if passage on Bifrost were open to all those who would cross. There are many fair places in heaven, and over everything there a godlike watch is kept. A hall stands there, fair under the ash by the well, and out of that hall come 3 maids, who are called thus: Urdur, Verdandi, Skold. These maids determine the period of men's lives. We call them Norns, but there are many Norns, those who come to each child that is born to appoint his life. These are the race of the gods, but the second are of the elf people, and the third are of the kindred of the dwarves, as it is said here. Most sundered in birth, I say the Norns are. They claim no common kin. Some are of the Aesir kin, some are of elf kind, some are Valin's daughters. Then said Gangleri, If the Norns determine the weirds of men, then they apportion exceedingly unevenly, seeing that some men have a pleasant and luxurious life, but others have little worldly goods or fame. Some have long life, others short. Har said, Good Norns and of honorable race appoint good life, but those men that suffer evil fortunes are governed by evil Norns. Stanza 16. Then said Gangleri, What more mighty wonders are to be told of the ash? Har replied, Much is to be told of it. An eagle sits there in the limbs of the ash, and he has understanding of many a thing, and between his eyes sits the hawk which is called Vedrfolnir. The squirrel called Ratatasker runs up and down the length of the ash, bearing envious words between the eagle and Nithogr. And 4 hearts run in the limbs of the ash, and bite the leaves. They are called thus: Dane, Valin, Daneir, Droathror. Moreover, so many serpents are in Vergelmer with Nithogr that no tongue can tell them, as is here said. Ash, Yggdrasil, suffers anguish, more than men know of. The stag bites above, on the side it rotteth, and Nithogr gnaws from below. And it is further said, More serpents lie under Yggdrasil's stalk than every unwise ape can think. Goin and Moin, their Grafvitnir's sons, Grabakr and Grafuldur, Ofnir and Svafnir, I think shall tear the trunk's twigs. It is further said that these Norns who dwell by the well of Urdur take water of the well every day, and with it that clay which lies about the well, and sprinkle it over the ash, to the end that its limbs shall not wither nor rot, for that water is so holy that all things which come there into the well become as white as the film which lies within the eggshell, as is here said. I know an ash, standing, called Yggdrasil, a high tree sprinkled with snow-white clay. Thence come the dews in the dale that fall. It stands evergreen above Urdur's well. That dew which falls from it onto the earth is called by men honeydew, and thereon are bees nourished. 2 fowls are fed in Urder's well. They are called swans, and from those fowls has come the race of birds, which is so called. Stanza 17. Then said Gangleri, Thou knowest many tidings to tell of the heaven. What chief abodes are there more than at Urder's well? Har said, Many places are there, and glorious. That which is called Alfheimer is one, where dwell the peoples called light elves. But the dark elves dwell down in the earth, and they are unlike in appearance, but by far more unlike in nature. The light elves are fairer to look upon than the sun, but the dark elves are blacker than pitch. Then there is also in that place the abode called Breidablik, and there is not in heaven a fairer dwelling. There too is the one called Glitnir, whose walls and all its posts and pillars are of red gold, but its roof of silver. There is also the abode called Himinbjorg. It stands at heaven's end, by the bridgehead, in the place where Bifrost joins heaven. Another great abode is there, which is named Valaskjalf. Odin possesses that dwelling. The gods made it and thatched it with sheer silver, and in this hall is the Lidskalf, the high seat so called. Whenever Allfather sits in that seat, he surveys all lands. At the southern end of heaven is that hall which is the fairest of all, and brighter than the sun. It is called Gimli. It shall stand when both heaven and earth have departed, and good men and of righteous conversation shall dwell therein. So it is said in Voluspa. A hall I know standing, than the sun fairer, thatched with gold and Gimli bright. There shall dwell the doers of righteousness, and ever enjoy delight. Then said Gangleri, What shall guard this place, when the flame of Surtr shall consume heaven and earth? Har answered, It is said that another heaven is to the southward and upward of this one, and it is called Ondlangar. But the third heaven is yet above that, and is called Vidblain, and in that heaven we think this abode is, but we believe that none but light elves inhabit these mansions now. Stanza 18. Then said Gangleri, Whence comes the wind? It is strong so that it stirs great seas, and it swells fire. But strong as it is, none may see it, for it is wonderfully shapen. Then said Har, That I am well able to tell thee. At the northward end of heaven sits the giant called Reisvelgr. He has the plumes of an eagle, and when he stretches his wings for flight, then the wind rises from under his wings, as is here said. Reisvelgr hight he, who sits at heaven's ending, giant in eagle's coat. From his wings they say, the wind cometh, all menfolk over. Stanza 19. Then said Gangleri, Why is there so much difference that the summer should be hot, but winter cold? Har answered, A wise man would not ask thus, seeing that all are able to tell this. But if thou alone art become so slight of understanding as not to have heard it, then I will yet permit that thou should ask rather foolishly once. He is called Svasudr, who is father of summer, and he is of pleasant nature, so that from his name whatsoever is pleasant is called sweet. But the father of winter is variously called Vindjolni or Vinsvalar. He is the son of Vasadr, and these were kinsmen, grim and chilly-breasted, and winter has their temper.